Hello chess friends and welcome to Yazarov's chess channel and welcome to another great game from this round 5 between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana. So in the first round of this match game, Magnus Carlsen managed to win the game with the black pieces in the Alekhine defense. I think he surprised a little bit Caruana. Caruana had his winning chances in the first game. Today, again, they faced each other. Magnus now playing with the white pieces, so let's check out what happened in the game. So, d4 played by Magnus, knight to f6, we have c4, and after e6 we have sort of a Queen's Indian setup. After knight to f3 we have the counter Nimzo Indian setup, and after d5 the game transposes into a Queen's Gambit declined. Knight to c3, the most natural way to proceed here with this 3 knights variation. Now comes d takes c4. And basically this game already transposes into sort of Queen's Gambit accepted, although the move order was a little bit different, but it's really like a Queen's Gambit accepted with this move d takes c4, and Magnus played the move e3, which is a calm way to proceed here. If you play something like e4, it leads into a dynamic game in which black would try the spinning idea after bishop to g5. We have really great tactical battle after potential b5, e5 is white's possibility, h6, bishop to h4 after g5, knight takes g5, h takes g, bishop takes g5, and now knight to d7 is one of the most aggressive lines. Still, black is proceeding here with this powerful queenside pawn storm. Another way here to proceed is, I see now Magnus many times playing this variation. He also tried sometimes after the move bishop to b4 here to play bishop to c4, but it again leads into a tactical battle with knight takes e4, castling, knight takes c, b takes c3, bishop takes c3, rook to b1. It's also an aggressive way in which white gave up some pawns, but has really a dynamic game with his bishop pair, with also the possibility to cement the knight on e5. So Magnus played here a calm game, not this aggressive way, and now Caruana played the move a6, which is a common idea. You see the importance of this move because now it forces Magnus to play the move a4. This I'm telling you because you see a couple inaccuracies. I'm not going to tell you which player will make an inaccuracy, but here after the move a4, the problem from white's perspective is that here we could use our knight to get on b4 and then cement the knight on d5, because Caruana played the move c5. I just want to keep that in mind when we come to this critical moment. We have now, of course, the opportunity to play the move c5. It's really like a Queen's Gambit accepted now. After bishop takes c4, knight to c6, castling played, which is still common theory, and now d takes c4. We have e takes d4. And there is one problem in white's position that Magnus is trying to solve here. It's this isolated pawn, and when we have an isolated pawn, from black's perspective here, the best way is to proceed to create a blockade. The best way, as I said, is to create a blockade against isolated pawns. So one of the ideas here, it was a natural move here by Caruana, first developing after bishop to e3, simply castling. So here after the move bishop to e3, chasing the bishop is not such a powerful idea. It seems that white can lose maybe the bishop pair, but the bishop pair is not so important in this game. After maybe queen to d2, if black goes for the bishop pair after f takes e3, for instance, castling, then you see e4. White has a powerful central pawn storm, and these knights are playing very important role in this powerful central control. So that's why it's not such a good here to go after the bishop. So in the game, Caruana played the move castling, and now comes the critical moment of the game. Knight to e5 played by Magnus Carlsen, and as I said, you could proceed here with some potential knight to b4 moves after rook to c1, knight to d5, really creating the blockade. Maybe try to kick away this knight with potential f6, because basically the white problem is that you cannot challenge this knight, you cannot kick it away with this a3 move or c3 move, because first of all you don't have anymore the c pawn, and as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, this a4 move, after Caruana played this move a6, forcing Magnus to play the move a4, it was really leaving also some spaces behind. Now you see Caruana could proceed here into a blocking system. But after the move knight to e5, basically it's Magnus that makes a mistake, because Caruana has the simple move queen to c7. It leads now black, I think, into a favorable continuation. After something like bishop to f4, if you try to hang on to this position, then rook to d8 is a serious threat. You could try some discoveries, but that's not the problem. Bishop takes d6, bishop takes d6, and you see the problem is now this weak pawn, this isolated pawn, which I said is the main weakness, so this doesn't work. In the continuation, Magnus could try, instead of this bishop to f4 idea, to take the knight on c6, but now we can simply play b takes c6 and still continue our battle for the d4 pawn with some potential c5 moves even, and we have also the opportunity now to play rook to b8 and continue to push against this b2 pawn. Another idea for Magnus here to defend after the move queen to c7 is also to play the move f4, but it's even worse. Probably Caruana was a little bit scared about this particular tactic that can happen now if you, for instance, take knight takes e5 immediately, which of course this wasn't happening in the game, but I just wanted to show you this critical moment really here. If you try, for instance, take f takes e5, Caruana was probably scared if he takes queen takes c4, then Magnus had some really great tactics. A takes f6, bishop takes, and now rook takes f6, g takes f6, and now knight to e4, I think wins the game for white, because we would then have the opportunity to play something like queen to g4, knight takes f6, bishop to h6. Really dangerous attacks against black's king. But the problem is about this f4 move that you don't have to take the knight immediately. Now a better idea is to play rook to d8, and this was, I think, Fabiano Caruana's maybe winning continuation, because now after something like queen to d2, because you want to hang on to your pawn, on an isolated pawn, queen to d2, and now it's a huge difference in the position, because now finally we could take knight takes e5, after f takes e5, now knight to g4, because the queen is not anymore on the g4 square. Now we are attacking this bishop, and it's really a problem. You have to retreat with the bishop. You're leaving again your position with this backward pawn, which is a new weakness, and I think black has here a comfortable game. But in the game after the move knight to e5, Caruana makes, I think, this inaccuracy. He could have proceeded with the great position. He played the move bishop to d7, and now we have knight takes d, queen takes d, and Magnus simply pushed forward to d5, e takes d, knight takes d5, simply exchanging many pieces on the board. Queen takes, bishop takes d5, and we reach now an endgame in which white has a completely domination, because white has a bishop pair. This bishops will work perfectly fine. In the game, Caruana tried bishop to f6, but it's not the problem about this b2 pawn. The problem is, for instance, here rook to d1 was played. If you try to grab this pawn, then rook to b1, again you have to retreat somewhere with the bishop, and then this rook comes very, very actively into the game. Your knight is hanging, you have a weak pawn, and the problem always for knight is this outside passed pawn. The knight has always trouble to fight against this outside passed pawn. So if this goes again into an endgame in which white has maybe an extra pawn, it's of course losing. So that's why Caruana didn't take. He tried to compete on the d file with move rook to d8, and now king to f1. This is really a great endgame move by Magnus Carlsen. It's really a great thing to see how he feels this endgame, because when we are in the endgame stage, you want to play actively with your king. Now it's time again to play somehow include the king in the attack. You'll see in the importance of the continuation of this move. Rook to d7. Caruana is trying to compete now, doubling up rooks on the d file. Bishop to f3. Here rook to d8, and now we have rook takes d7, rook takes d7, and again now rook to c1, leaving this pawn hanging. It's not again a problem if bishop takes b2. Here again we could try rook to b1. Maybe even a better idea here is immediately to take this knight on c6. I think it's even much better, because after b takes c6 we have now the opportunity to play rook takes c6, and black's problem is now this back rank problem. You see, you have to protect first your back rank, and then Magnus can take this pawn on a6, and it would be again completely winning endgame, because this pass pawn Fabiano Caruana cannot catch. So after the move rook to c1, rook to d6 was played, and now Magnus played a very nice move, knight to b4, challenging the knight. In the game, here g5 was played by Caruana. If you try here knight to takes b4, then rook to c7, is a great move. You see, Magnus doesn't have the back rank problems. First of all, this bishop is of course covering this d1 square, but still, if even you get checked, you can still escape on e2. Now again, in the possible continuation, knight to d3, we could simply take, and after a couple of moves we can, I think, also grab this pawn. Still, you're continuing the game with this back rank problems. Again, you have to lose some tempos in order to create some breathing space. So in the game, Caruana didn't take the pawn, he played the move g5, and now Magnus simply pushed rook to c5. We have knight takes b4, and now finally this rook comes very actively into the game. Rook to d8, rook takes, bishop takes d8, and now bishop takes b7. Now even this pawn is hanging on a6, so that's why Caruana tried to include also his king into the game, but now Magnus is simply faster. That's what I liked really in this endgame technique by Magnus, playing first this move, king to f1. Great endgame play here by the world champion. a5, king to d2. Now you see how fast this king comes after this pawn on a5, and in the game Magnus played first h3, of course, not allowing to take this h2 pawn. Now after g4, not a problem, we can simply go after this pawn. In the game, king to e5 was played by Caruana, but not a problem. First h takes g, f takes g4, and now bishop to d6 is now a winning continuation with this extra pawn. As I said, the knight has always troubles to catch up with this pawn. We have king to d6. Now Magnus simply took, and now also very important move, bishop to e4. We can take this pawn whenever we like. Now it's time to first challenge this pawn, h5, and now finally taking the pawn on a5. In the game, Caruana tried to counterplay with the move knight to a2, but first, very important move, g3, never allowed this pawn to get further. In the game, knight to c3 was played by Caruana, and now bishop to c2. If you, for instance, make a mistake here, this could be a mistake that Magnus could have played, bishop to g6, immediately challenging this pawn, then knight to d1 can solve some problems here. You don't want to lose, of course, pawns here, so that's why in the game Carlsen played the accurate move. Bishop to c2 never allowed this knight to attack this pawn, so now it's time to push our extra a pawn. In the game, knight to e2 was played by Caruana, but now knight to bishop to g6, attacking the h5 weakness, and in this position Caruana resigned. In the next move we'll grab simply these two pawns, and this knight against 3 pawns and the bishop is of course a lost position for black. This was a weird game, I think. This knight to e5 by Magnus wasn't the most accurate move. Caruana didn't punish that, lost the game eventually because of this one slight inaccuracy, and okay, still you have to make, you're not supposed to make this kind of inaccuracies against the world champion. Maybe he was slow on time, I'm not sure, but still it was a great endgame technique by Magnus Carlsen. I really like this king to f1 move. We'll see what will happen in the continuation of this match game. Caruana is really down here. He has to improve if he wants to make something happen. Meanwhile, you can watch my other analyzed games so far, between the two of them. Here's the link, and you can also watch my best chess games of all time if you want to see the best chess games that have ever played in chess history. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.